I originally wasn't going to make this video, but I feel compelled to, because I'm mad. You see, I made a video a while ago that went whatever the equivalent of viral is for linguistics content. If you don't know me, I'm Dr. Taylor Jones. I have a PhD in linguistics from the University of Pennsylvania, the best of the other Ivies, and I make humorous, flippant, some would even say glib YouTube content about linguistics and language learning. It may be silly, but it's always accurate and backed by peer-reviewed empirical research. Anyway, in my baby viral video, I gave 10 sort of tongue-in-cheek tips for faking being an online polyglot. I called out a few YouTubers, but not by name, who I think are charlatans, snake oil salesmen. As my channel has grown, so have theirs, and their viewership has far surpassed mine. I'm not mad about that. What I'm mad about is that some of them are literally using all 10 of my tips and getting away with it. One has even had the audacity to have his assistant send me an email asking if I would interview him on my channel and bask in the magnificent glory of a man who claims to speak over 50 languages. I'm sorry, did I say 50? I went back when fact-checking my script, and the email says, and I quote, 100 languages conversationally and 12 languages fluently. No, you don't. This is unacceptable. The original video was supposed to be funny and not really a how-to, but I realized I left a lot out, especially if you don't want to be a huckster. Suppose you don't want to fake it, you want to spot a fraud. Aha! So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to equip you with some tools to know what to look for to determine if things maybe aren't adding up. To 112. I'm Dr. Taylor Jones, and I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And this is Language Jones. This week's video is sponsored by my sense of righteous indignation. People are misrepresenting themselves on the internet, and that's not right. There's not a sponsor, but if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so right here on YouTube with super thanks and super chat. Or you can head over to patreon.com/languagejones and become a patron. The more patrons I have, the more certain I am to be able to pay the mortgage. But my promise to you is that I will never accept sponsorship from BetterHelp. Now on to unmasking confidence men. Some people have a bullshit meter. I have a bullshit Geiger counter, and these are the things that make it ping. 1. Sheer numbers. One internet polyglot recently claimed he would explain how he learns any language in 24 hours. Another claims to speak over 100 languages. Really? Let's do some math here, since linguistics is basically just math masquerading as a humanity anyway. I'm an American, so I'll take the US State Department's stats here. They divide languages into 4 categories, where 1 is the easiest and 4 is the hardest for a native English speaker. Category 1 languages include languages like Dutch, which is English spoken silly. It is mijn kopje koffie, it is een boek. French, which is the source of all fancy English like circumnavigation or charcuterie or je ne sais quoi or toodles. Yes, really. Or Spanish, which is the language you hear in America when you go outside. Category 2 includes languages like German or Swahili. Category 3 has languages like Albanian, Amharic, Armenian, and Azerbaijani, all the way down to Ukrainian, Urdu, Uzbek, and Vietnamese. Category 4 has super hard languages, which includes Arabic, Japanese, and a handful of others. I'm assuming Zulu is there. They have over 75 years of experience getting people ready to be diplomats and spies and stuff, and they know how long this stuff takes. Category 1 languages take between 600 and 750 class hours to become proficient. That's not self-study, and that's assuming homework. And proficient is a 3 on the Interagency Language Roundtable scale. The scale goes to 5 in increments of 1/2 starting at 0. So let's be generous and assume a claim that you speak a language is the low level of proficiency. And let's assume that you're a super genius, so you don't need 750 hours, you can do it in 600. And let's assume you're a super duper genius and you don't need real life contact with actual speakers, you can just learn from your flashcard app that gives you literally random sentences in your target language and teaches you no grammar. That's still, let's see, if we do the math, 50 languages times 600 hours is 30,000 hours. Let's say you dedicate 8 hours a day to language study because you don't have a job and you're an independently wealthy super duper genius. That's still 3,750 days. So obviously, you're a highly motivated, independently wealthy super duper genius and you take no days off. That's 10 years. 100 languages, that's 20 years. And that's assuming that you can come up with 50 languages like Dutch and Swedish and Danish that are related to English and related to each other. Category 3 languages, ones with significant linguistic and cultural differences but not super hard, take approximately 1,100 hours to get passably okay at, and that's most languages. That's 55,000 hours or almost 19 years of full-time 8-hour-a-day study or 38 years for 100 languages. That math ain't mathin'. And that's if you don't ever need to go back and review anything that you've already learned. So the first language you learned 20 years ago needs no further practice. Now, learning hello and a few pleasantries in 50 languages, that can be done in the span of a week, but that's not what anybody means by speaking a language. 2, how do they talk? Do they only ever talk about learning languages and themselves? One thing I pay attention for is intermediate and advanced grammar. This varies by language, but I can give you a few examples. For French, if you're going to say something in the future, everything is future. So you wouldn't say, when I am in France, I will eat 1,000,000 baguettes. You would have to say the equivalent of, when I will be in France, I will eat 1,000,000 baguettes. This is a subtle difference, and while it's not hard, it really messes up native English speakers, and it takes time to learn. Similarly, more complex sentences with subordinate clauses require you to learn the subjunctive. And anything non-veridical, that is hypotheticals, subjunctive modality, conditionals, and so on, is often more tricky. So even if you don't know the language they're claiming to speak, does the translation indicate that they're saying things like, I wish I had had the opportunity to do thus and such, and if I ever go back to n'importe où, I will do so? Or is it all, I think n'importe quelle language is beautiful? Basically, are you hearing things like, I want to X, Y, and Z, or are you hearing things like, before I left n'importe où, I wish I had had the opportunity to X, Y, and Z? Sticking with French, beginners and intermediate students will even mess up basics, like saying quoi que ce soit, not n'importe quoi. The latter often means bullshit. I once heard someone tell a bereaved mourner the equivalent of, don't hesitate to call me for bullshit. At least it lightened the mood. By the way, leave me a comment for the algorithm with a time that you misspoke embarrassingly in another language. I had some great replies last time I asked this, and now my channel has like 40,000 more subscribers, so this should be entertaining for all of us. Anyway, I almost never hear even intermediate grammatical concepts from purported polyglots, although I will say that the women online seem to be better about this. 3, this is building on 2, but beyond how they talk, what actual subject matter do they discuss? The hyperpolyglots basically only ever discuss being a hyperpolyglot because that's all they can. They can maybe buy food, haggle in a marketplace, talk about how beautiful whatever language is, and talk about how they like learning languages. That's basically it. You know what? I take that back. I haven't seen any of them actually haggle. That would be kind of impressive. Instead of haggling, they show the people who reacted with, "Wow, 你中文说得太好了，真厉害，真厉害." Which isn't even a real compliment, it's a face-saving strategy deployed when a weird foreign tryhard shows up to your food stand with a camera unannounced. That's part of why in my video on Quebec French I made a point of saying some fancy things, just because I can. And I want listeners who know what's up to know that I can. I can do that in French and sort of in Chinese after an undergraduate degree in it and a lot of self-study. But everything else I speak at what I would call a phrasebook level. That'll get you surprisingly far, but I would never portray it as fluent. 4, building on the previous few, do they ever actually use the language? Jodie Foster and Bradley Cooper have given interviews on French TV where they talk about stuff, politics, a new film, so on. The most egregious of the YouTube polyglots I haven't seen talk about anything really. But not only are they talking about interesting topics, we're talking about Jodie Foster now, like in the previous point, but they're doing so unscripted and with real people. If I see one of these guys extemporaneously give a nuanced picture of the geopolitical situation in the Middle East and how it relates to NATO and the war in Ukraine, I will literally eat my hat. Hell, if one of them so much as gives a nuanced description of the science of learning, I'll eat 2 hats. So if the person purporting to speak a bunch of languages only speaks them in controlled situations where they're either talking directly to camera, like me right now, or they're shocking locals, I'd be very skeptical. 5, jump cuts. If you see an interview in another language, assuming you can even find one, compare the rate of jump cuts when the interviewer is talking versus the interviewee. Being able to speak fluently and articulately after post-production is not the same as being able to communicate effectively in the moment. And at a certain pace of edits, you should be wondering why so many edits are necessary and what they're trying to hide. Disfluencies? Mispronunciations? Using Google Translate for a hot second? 6, something to sell. I'm not saying everybody with something to sell is bad. I have merch and I may develop course materials later. But are they claiming that you should buy something from them to learn a language based on their claim that they speak a lot and therefore know it's effective? Having studied, even actually speaking a lot of languages is nowhere near as effective for a teacher as understanding course design, knowing the science of memory, familiarity with the academic literature on second language acquisition. A good friend of mine speaks French, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. He is the absolute last person I would ask to teach me, a beginner, Spanish, since he's got a 30,000-foot view of the whole Romance language family and a bajillion neural pathways already primed for cognates and similar grammatical structures. Of course he thinks it's not hard to learn. You could practically infer Spanish from what you already know at that point. Then again, I accidentally did that once and it didn't go well, and you all won't let me forget it. This point is especially true if the thing they're selling doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's one who has what are effectively batch-generated flashcards of random sentences, and the idea is that if you study enough, you'll just intuit grammar. This is unhinged. I know people who studied Mandarin for years in classroom settings who never pieced together that the subject position in a subject-verb-object sentence, as opposed to a topic-comment sentence, are always definite, and that you need to move things around if it's indefinite. For instance, Sangaren Laila means the three men came, and you'd have to say Yo Sangaren or Laila Sangaren to mean some or any three men came. This is just not something you're going to intuit from flashcards. This is not something native English speakers intuit after years in country or after years of college-level study if it's not explicitly taught. Moreover, the same application I'm thinking of very frequently has transcription in the International Phonetic Alphabet, which is great. That doesn't match the audio that they've included. But I can do a full review later. 7. I didn't think this would need to be said, but claiming to speak dead languages, especially minority languages where the last speaker recently died. There's something truly perverse about this one because not only is the only person who could verify it dead, but it's profiting off their cultural heritage which died with them. Padding your resume with unverifiable information is bad enough, but claiming to be the secret last speaker of Tao, for example, is not just self-aggrandizing, it's cruel and it's a desecration of the dead. Say what you will about Benny or Luca or whoever, but they didn't claim to speak like Central Alaskan Yupik or anything to my knowledge. And no, I'm not saying don't add Gothic to your resume if you're an old-timey philologist. You can say you speak Akkadian, and I'm not going to get mad if you can't order a coffee, since that language died before coffee was discovered, and also, that's not what you do in Akkadian. You besiege cities, you abduct women, you sacrifice to the gods, and whatever. So if you can do all that then, and I mean don't do all that, but more power to you. But currently endangered languages or recently defunct ones, that's low. And lastly, number 8, claiming expertise in linguistic subfields with no degree and no publications. If you put something like optimality theory on your resume, you'd better believe I'm going to go to Google Scholar and put in your name and optimality theory. That one sounds great and is not at all what it sounds like. I know this video was less jokey ha 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 than my previous polyglot video, but again, I'm pretty annoyed at what I'm seeing and I really want to help save you, the YouTube viewer and potential consumer of these products, from being taken in by conmen. Why is it always men? Hashtag not all men. Thank you to all my patrons. If you liked this video and you want to help support me to make more content like this, please think about either donating right here on YouTube or becoming a patron at patreon.com/languagejones. And of course, like, subscribe, comment, and share. I'm trying to make videos more regularly and aiming for every Wednesday, although obviously it's maybe not Wednesday when this was released, but I'm doing my best. For those of you who are curious how I study, I've been doing live streams semi-regularly on Sundays and Mondays. I did a few months of Persian, and I'll probably go back to it. And the last few months have been Hebrew and Arabic. Later, I might go back to Spanish and Mandarin. We'll see. Until next time, happy learning, and don't believe everything that you see on the internet.